Tonight's meeting to order at 6 p.m. Tonight is Tuesday, February 11th. We are at the Carmel Clay Board, Parks and Recreation. Mark, will you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Jonathan.
Present.
That's John. Okay. Got John.
Legally, if my mother was here.
Gotcha. But Jonathan Blake is not here, correct? Okay. Jim Garrettson. Judy Hagan is absent. Jen is here. Katie.
Present.
Reedy. I'm here. And Lynn.
Here.
We have a quorum, Madam President.
Perfect, thank you. And we'd like to also welcome our two new board members tonight, John Shapiro from the school board and Reedy Shukla, our new mayoral appointee. So welcome. We will go ahead and stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. Now we will move on to public comments. We don't have any, and have you received any comment cards, Curtis?
We have not.
Okay, thanks for that. And then next on our agenda is staff reports. It is in your packet. Before I turn it over to Curtis, when we go through that, can you please point out the following, the forward for focus that's in our master plan? If you could remind the board for us and our new members. And then talk a little bit about our braille and tactile signs at River Heritage Park. And then the last is the Birdathon grant that we received, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll let Michael talk about the forward focus, but first and foremost, staff reports are in your packets. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Before I answer those questions, I also wanted to point out that in this packet, we have included this what's called the Strategic Implementation Status Report. And basically what it is each year, typically in February, we provide this report, which is a synopsis of the goals and objectives, the accomplishments of the department over the course of the last year. So from the current master plan, the goals and objectives, the things that we've accomplished over the course of 2024 as it pertains to our master plan. This happens to be the last strategic implementation status report from the 2020 to 2024 master plan. So the one that we submit next year in 2026 will actually be the first one for the new master plan that was adopted in November. So I just want to point that out. As Jen noted, as it pertains to the tactile, the braille, and the interpretive signage at River Heritage Park. We did just add that. Actually, we added that in this past fall. So the press release is a little late, but better late than never, I suppose. We're really excited. We added, I think, we had 12 signs or 10 signs? I think we added 10 signs out at Founders Park. They're interactive, interpretive signs. It's the first. It's a newer design, something that our department hasn't really embarked upon before, but some of them have moving pieces. They all have braille. So check it out. We're really proud of it. It's something that we just haven't, it's not something that we've dabbled with before. So we've always had interpretive signage, but it's been the traditional, you have to walk up to the sign, you have to read it. We haven't had the braille, so that was a new addition. We also added that to the bison artwork, or the bison and calf art installation that we did at Central Park this year too. We added the braille to that as well. So pretty exciting. You want to talk about the forward focus?
Yeah, so I'll focus on the forward focus from the most recently concluded master plan. What we try to do and for our new board members, under Indiana Department of, Indiana Department of Natural Resources, we're required every 5 years to adopt a new 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Now, there's no civil fines or anything if you don't do it, but it makes you eligible for grants that are administered through the Department of Natural Resources, so there's an incentive to do so. But more importantly, it's the right thing to do, because what we do is it's a very robust public input process where we're asking the community through a variety of different mechanisms, including statistically valid surveys, through focus groups, conversations with users and non-users, key stakeholders, elected and appointed officials, just to find out the types of things that people like about the parks and what they would like to see us do in the future. And while for the state, it's kind of a check mark, for us, it's really a living document, and it's the means by which we as a park system measure our successes and things that we need to do. It also becomes the framework for the goals and objectives that we establish for each of our employees, especially our full-time employees. And you will find when you look at our evaluations, that they're tied directly to those goals. So we show how everyone can help us achieve that. So it's something that we take very seriously. And then there's always a variety of goals and objectives that are outlined within the plan, but then we'll have both the most recently concluded master plan and the new one, what we call a forward focus, which are our top 4 priorities. Sort of to put it a different way, if we're down to our last dollar, what are the things that we direct that to? And we kind of go back to the forward focus. So for the last master plan, the 4 things were the Carmel White River Regional Corridor, the West Regional Corridor, reimagining existing parks, and celebrating nature. And the way we like describing that is for the West Corridor, when we developed this master plan, the only park that we had on the west side was West Park. And since I was hired by the park system over 20 years ago, it's been a well-demonstrated need that we need more parks on the west side. A lot of growth on the west side, but not a lot of parks. Obviously, we do take into consideration that Cox Hall Gardens is there and a county park, but even with the county park, we certainly could use more parkland. So during this planning period, we were able to secure the 27 acres that is now Bear Creek Park, and is slated for Phase 1 development thanks to funding from the city of Carmel and from bonds passed by the city council. It also, we secured 9 acres just across the street from Bear Creek Park to begin the initial phase of Bear Creek Greenway, which was put in by the developer of the subdivision that donated the property. And the bigger idea is ultimately working with the dance club, with schools, with parks, to both county and Carmel Clay Parks, to identify how can we make sure there's connectivity between our various green spaces and recreational opportunities. So that was sort of the focus on that. But the big check mark for that, of course, was acquisition of Bear Creek. The White River component, from the early days of the park system when we were established in 1991, the original master plan, if you will, had what we called the 5 fingers. And the idea then was developing an East, Central, and West Park, with the East Park now being called Lawrence W. Inlow Park, and Central Park having the original name of Central Park, because we have really original names for some of our parks, but are exciting names. But the other ones were the Monon Greenway and the White River. So I mention that because basically since the inception of the park system, this park board has had a focus on the White River, and ideally creating a greenway trail network that is along or near the river as close as possible from 96th Street to 146th Street. And for much of our history, we've sort of been stuck where we have been for about 2.5 miles of the White River Greenway, and our Hazel Landing Park, which was at the time about 40 acres, our River Heritage Park, which also is about 40 acres, and then the county's River Road Park. And since that time, thanks through agreements with the city, we've expanded Hazel Landing Park to almost 99 acres, so our 3rd largest park now in the park system. We have received a $4 million grant to develop the north extension of the White River Greenway for about 1.3 miles approximately. which will include an overlook and a trailhead and restroom facility, which will be a great addition. We are also, we did the renovations at River Heritage Park, so big check marks on that. And just as importantly, we participated in the regional planning with Marion County, Hamilton County, all the communities within those two counties, as well as a lot of other private partners to develop the White River Vision Plan, which is that regional focus on really celebrating the White River as our most significant natural resource, but also as a cultural resource. And so everything that we've been doing, while not driven by the White River Vision Plan, certainly supports the White River Vision Plan, which we're very excited about. Reimagining existing parks was made possible. It was something that we identified as a need within the master plan, but we were able to renovate almost every single one of our parks thanks to almost $30 million received through the Clay Township Impact Program, a bond program that the township issued that allowed us to do significant upgrades and really reimagine Flowing Well and Cary Grove and Meadowlark Park and West Park and Enlow Park and River Heritage Park. And also with some upgrades around Central Park, especially with the roundabouts along 111th Street that made access into the parks and just getting around the park much easier. So all things that were very important. Not included in the $30 million is the dollars that the township provided to the Dad's Club for the new field house that they have that we are able to use during the summer months for our camps. So again, a big check mark there. And then celebrating nature, sort of, again, back to the roots of the park system. We were founded through a grassroots efforts of residents that wanted to save and preserve green space within the community. And again, that's always been banked in our DNA, but we started focusing much more significantly on environmental stewardship and really looking at not only having these green spaces and natural areas, but maintaining them at an appropriate level. Because just because you plant a prairie doesn't mean you can walk away from it and do nothing. It still requires maintenance, much less so than a mown turf area, for example, but still something that still has to be properly managed. So that was something that was very much part and parcel with everything we did over the last 5 years and will continue to be, obviously. So very pleased with the progress on each of those. I'm also going to take the moment, sort of while we're talking about celebrating nature. You may have received or had a chance to review the email I sent out over the weekend, but Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation has lost one of our full-time employees this weekend, Jerry Kozlonsky, who was our operations manager that oversaw our natural resources. So Michael Allen, our Parks and Natural Resources Director, gave me some bullet points to help identify exactly what he was doing for the park system so I wouldn't forget as I was trying to give him an appropriate commemoration. But he had been with the department just shy of 2 years, moved to Carmel from Pennsylvania. His oversight basically included all of the nature programs. He was responsible for overseeing the volunteer coordinator and volunteer programs, as well as all of our natural resources operations. Jerry had a master's in teaching from Marywood University in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is actually where he grew up, and a bachelor's in outdoor recreation from Syracuse, and a long professional background working in environmental education at various places, especially on the East Coast. He was a lifelong educator, hunter, and angler, and had a passion for the outdoors, sharing insight of the natural world with anyone and everyone was truly one of his gifts. Like I said, he relocated here with previously working at a nature center that was located just outside of Philadelphia, and he moved here with his wife and one of his 2 daughters. He did a wonderful job of retooling our half-day summer nature program, especially our summer camps, and we saw over 100% increase in enrollment from 23 to 2024 under his tutelage. He significantly increased our outreach with scouts, including multiple badge programs geared toward the Girl Scouts with a unique partnership that has gained a lot of traction since he came here. And, most notably, he just had this positive energy and was an incredible person to be around. Something that will never truly be replaced with the special guy that he was. But, you know, we wish the best to his family and everyone that was touched by Jerry, including many of our program participants and volunteers. So I did want to take the opportunity during this meeting to, it's not often that we lose one of our employees while still an employee. So wanted to commemorate everything he did for us.
Thank you, Michael.
There's a reason why I let him take the forward focus question. I knew that it'd be a lot longer than the answer that I would have provided. So, but you did a phenomenal job. And speaking of Jerry, I just wanted to know, Jen, you hit one of your questions was also regarding the grant that we received from the Audubon Society. We did receive a $2,800 grant from them, specifically for birding and the parks, and we have used those funds to acquire binoculars for our program participants. One of the goals and objectives of I'll call it the old master plan, the 2020 to the 2024 master plan, was to hire a resource development coordinator, which we did. Carrie, she has been instrumental in helping our department receive several grants, and she's received a ton of sponsorships. She's helping us do a lot of fundraising, and she put this together, and Jerry was instrumental in helping her put together the information that we needed to get that grant. So another kudos to him as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have with regards to staff reports.
Does anyone have any other questions regarding staff reports? Thank you for such a fine job, and we do wish the best for Jerry's family. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to committees. Finance Committee, Lynn?
Finance Committee didn't meet last month.
Okay, thank you. And then Strategic Funding Committee, I believe that's Mark.
Yes, it hasn't met either.
Okay, thank you. Secretary, I'll be looking to you for the minutes.
Okay, included in the board packet is minutes from the last meeting. If anybody has any questions or comments? Should I make the motion? Okay. So I move to approve the minutes of the annual and regular park board meeting on January 14th, 2025.
Thanks, Mark and Jim. All those in favor of Mark's motion, please say aye. Aye. Any abstentions or oppositions, I guess? No? Okay. Motion passed. Then we'll go to Treasurer Lynn for the consolidated financial reports.
I move to acknowledge receipt of consolidated financials report for December 2024 and to acknowledge receipt of the P&L statements for January 2025.
Second.
Okay. Lynn's made a motion, and Jonathan, right? John, down there. Do you go by John or Jonathan? Sorry. John. Okay. This is going to be hard. Jonathan, John. Okay. So all those in favor of Lynn's motion for the P&L statements and the consolidated financial statements, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions or what's the other word? Oppositions. Thank you. Okay. Motion carries. Lynn?
I move to approve the claim sheet dated February 11th, 2025, and to approve payroll wages and liabilities for payroll dates January 10th and January 24, 2025.
Is there a second? Thank you, Jim. Are there any questions? It looks like we have some more detail, Curtis, for the expenses.
Yeah, I was going to mention that when we were going through the consolidated financials and the P&L statements. This is something you'll notice that there's an additional cover sheet for the profit and loss statements this month. This is something that we started doing early in 2020. Every month, I basically would go through my P&L statements and I'll jot down notes regarding different line items that I'm tracking. Variances from one year to the next. But in 2020, we started adding the additional cover sheet that provided basically my thoughts and some of the different line items that I was paying particular attention to. As we all are aware, in 2020, the pandemic set in. So we stopped doing the additional explanation because we were trying to compare really the unknown to, in 2019 was one of the best years in the department's history. So I've started doing that again. I hope that you find them helpful. Again, this is early in 2025, so a lot of the stuff could be timing related, but I'll update these each month, and you can kind of see where my head's at with regards to, the way that we're training financially and stuff. But I hope that you find them helpful.
Perfect. So we'll make a motion on the claims and payroll. I believe Lynn made the motion and Jim seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. For those that are new, if you have any questions regarding the financial reports or claims, please feel free to email Curtis before the meetings if you need explanations or you don't understand the funds or any of that, so that you can get your answers before you come to the meetings and then you feel comfortable. Okay, moving on to monetary gifts, grants, and partnerships. Eric?
Thank you. Last month, we received 3 contributions. We received $100 from the park board. So through at the end of the year, we generally have done a collection from the park board members. And so through your contributions, we put that towards our staff appreciation. We also had a sponsorship agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management. So they're sponsoring one of our Lunch and Learn programs. And then a $100 donation from our anonymous donor towards our staff appreciation. So totaling $450 for the month.
Thank you, Eric. Will someone make a motion? So we need a motion first. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this.
Perfect. Thank you. So all in favor of Mark's motion to accept the monies, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No abstentions or oppositions. Thank you. Moving on to new business, Michael?
Actually, I'll let Eric do the first item,
Oh,
which is
sorry.
consideration of a purchase of Amazing Airways play equipment. Eric, it's
you.
all yours.
Thank you. So for your consideration tonight, we received a proposal for some additional playground equipment for the indoor playground that we are constructing at the Monon Community Center. So I included in your packet, if you guys have copies of that to bring up, you guys can. One of the things with the indoor playground that we were kind of working towards is making sure that we have enough kind of activities and things for the kids to interact with. And so one of the kind of missions and directions that we got was to try to find some things that were more kind of like STEM type programs, activities that we could integrate into the space. So we obviously have the big climber that we're going to be putting in and some of the bigger playground stuff, but this additional piece of equipment will just be an added kind of entertainment thing for them, something for them to interact with. So within the packet, I provided you with Amazing Airways proposal. So MindSplash is the company. Their product is called Amazing Airways. There's some photos in there for you guys to look at as well as a reference. So they use these a lot in some of the smaller like science, kid activities centers, children's museums and things. So it's basically a series of a couple air blowers that hook up to all these tubes, and so it's all constructed. It's customized, designed for our space to fit in exactly where we wanted it to within our space, and so we're going to be using some of the open wall space that we have you create these tube systems, and it has a couple different entry points where they can put some balls and scarves. into them, and they can change the valves, and they can change the direction of the travel. Everything's clear, so they can see everything kind of rushing through these tubes. We've designed it in a way that it kind of spans a pretty long span over our kind of bulkhead area, mezzanine area. So it kind of will cause the kids to kind of have to run back and forth and be a little bit more interactive and get a little bit of extra exercise as they're interacting with it. So that's the basic gist of it. Happy to answer any questions that you have. But
And one of the things I'll note is this is a sole source provider, so it's not like we could go out and get quotes from from multiple vendors because there's only one vendor that makes this particular product. So we are requesting that you approve Resolution B 2025-001, which outlines that we're using special purchasing provisions and just gives a good documentation trail, which always makes the person to my left very happy when we do. So.
Since you're quoting that, can you tell us what Indiana code that is?
Sure, it is Indiana Code, Section 522-10-12, and this is especially as it pertains to a single source provider for goods.
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Eric regarding this?
I have a question. How many kids can interact with it at one time?
so there's going to be the one that we're proposing has 3 blowers. So there's at least 3 entry points, and then there's going to be, I believe, 6 valves. So I mean, at minimum that, but I would say even more just for the sheer fact that the exit point of where everything's going to be blowing out of is going to be quite a distance. So there's going to be quite a bit of entertainment and interaction with quite a few kids in that area.
Yeah, I think it's great. My kids love this feature in the play zone at the Children's Museum, so I would imagine it being very popular. That's what I was asking.
Yeah. And this will be one of their bigger ones. So we kind of really pushed them to use, because our space is a little bit different than what they're used to, because it's usually on kind of a flat wall. This is going to be really centrally located in the room, so it's wrapped around a column. So all the blowers are going to be kind of encased inside of that area, so that nobody can really get to them. And so we really maximized the amount of play space that's going to be available to them, and really stretched, like I said, that span that it's going to be going across. So.
Great.
Mark?
Okay, Eric. So if one kid gets stuff going in one direction, can another kid divert it to hit the things that a third child forced in there, so there are collisions?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's no fun.
So I don't think anything should be able to get like trapped in there or anything. But yeah, I think they're on kind of different pathways and everything. So I don't think that they'll
So they crisscross throughout the, interesting.
tubing and everything will kind of overlap and
So you have objects that are being moved by the air of different types going through the different tubes that are crisscrossing each other. Cool. Love it.
Anyone else? Yep.
Will there be sanitizer stations around there? Just in,
that's a good question.
just because it's going to be a lot of touching the equipment?
Yeah,
So maybe just one.
that's a good question. I mean, we haven't.
The answer will be yes. We will add them. That'll be an easy add, but an excellent question.
Because they
and
do
so-
actually touch it and then they shove it in and then they have to move the controls, they actually have to move them. So
Yeah.
just if multiple kids are playing at the same time.
Yeah, there's
it
a
can-
lot of interactive things within this playground.
Yeah.
If you haven't gotten on to see all the different designs of some of the other things, some of the interactive things we haven't had to take to the board just because of the price has been within our purchasing authority, but there's quite a few interactive pieces in there. The Lightzilla is one that we're really excited about. It's currently installed there. It's a giant adult-sized light bright. So it has all these little colorful pegs that kids can put in and make designs and stuff. So yes, there's a lot of cleaning, I think, in the future for our staff.
We'll have hand sanitizers in the space, but we also have washers and dryers up in fitness, so we should be able to launder the scarves pretty easy.
And additionally, there are 2 single stall restrooms within the kids space, so it'll, I mean,
Okay. There'll be
easy,
access.
easy for,
Okay.
for parents and guardians to take the kiddos right over to that.
Okay, sounds good.
Won't actually have to leave the playground.
Awesome. Any more questions? If not, we'll take a motion.
I move to approve Resolution B 2025-001, authorizing the purchase of the Amazing Airways product for the new indoor playground from Mindsplash LLC in the amount of $122,500, using special purchasing provisions permitted by Indiana Code Sections 5-22-10-12.
Thanks, Mark and Katie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? And any final questions? Perfect. We are all in favor. Moving on to the next consideration of Resolution G 2025-002. Michael?
Yes, this next item is not near as exciting as the last one. This is really a housekeeping issue. Because of the unique organizational structure of Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation being formed through the City of Carmel and Clay Township, under the interlocal cooperation agreement which forms the park system, as it's written, the fiscal officer for the City of Carmel serves as the Park Board's fiscal officer, meaning that they're the ones that write the checks. They're the ones that, when the State Board of Accounts is doing their audits, they're going to the city to review the documentation that they audit pertaining to parks. But because of the township, over the years, the township has purchased on our behalf, on the Park Board's behalf, a number of things using local income tax dollars that were attributable to the Central Park Bond. And they were purchased through Fund 1215, which is maintained by the Clay Township trustee. Even though all those assets that were purchased through that were the property of the Park Board, the State Board of Accounts has always viewed those as township assets, and the township trustee has to report them on the township's asset list. What this next item will do, thanks to crafting from legal counsel, is transfer the assets that the Park Board already owns from the township to the Park Board so that it can now be added to the city's asset list for the Park Board. So it really is one of those technical things, a nit to be able to implement the change to the city, but it doesn't change ownership because the Park Board is still the owner of them. Did I leave out any pertinent details?
No, just that the township has gotten written up by the State Board of Accounts for each of the last 4 years on this issue, so it's kind of a thorn. They're only write-up from the State Board of Accounts. So this will resolve it and documents that all the assets are owned by the Park Board.
Is
It's retroactive to January 1 also.
Of
so
this
that's-
year?
Of this year,
perfect?
and the township will be adopting it next week.
Should we pass it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, fantastic. I will take a motion.
I move to adopt Resolution G 2025-002 as presented.
Thanks, Mark and Jim. All those in favor of said motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, any final questions? All right. Mr. Park Board Attorney, you may take this to the next meeting to get it moved. The
Okey-doke.
township.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Resolution G 2025-003 regarding the interest in and authorizing the purchase of real estate. Michael?
So as we talked about when looking at the most recently concluded Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as well as the provision with the White River continues in the current master plan as one of our forward focuses. Every now and then I get a unprompted inquiry or email from the public, and this is initiated from one such email. Jess Lawhead, who owns the property at 11805 River Road, contacted me to see if the park board might be interested in purchasing his and his wife's house. What's special about this house is a couple things. First and foremost, it is bordered by River Heritage Park. So its northern and eastern borders touch the park. Second, the house that is on the property is the oldest house in the city of Carmel. It was constructed 198 years ago by Silas and Hannah Moffett. If you drive on the east side, you'll see a lot of things named after the Moffats or descendants of the Moffats. Also what's kind of interesting is where the overlook is going to be installed is a grandchild of the Moffats. The Haverstick property, for the older board members, will have heard that name before. So it's one of those things that typically, as a park system, we're not interested in houses because houses typically create issues. And when we buy properties with houses on them, usually one of the first things we try to do is tear the house down so that we can develop it for park purposes. Most recently, that occurred with Bear Creek Park. But in this particular case, the continuity with and connectivity to the existing park and the historical significance of the house make it interesting for both purposes, expanding the park and preserving some unique Carmel history. I was able to tour the house on Friday with a number of the key leadership team with the park system. And, you know, for an almost 200-year house, it's a lot more open concept than one would think. There are 4 primary rooms, 3 of them original to the house and a 4th one located on what used to be a porch that has now been enclosed. And those are all kind of interconnected with decent size openings between the rooms. I mean, again, not open concept by today's standards, but a degree of continuity that makes it an interesting space. The upstairs, the family is growing. I think they have 2 younger children that are, of course, getting older every day. And there is no hallway between the rooms. So, as Jess said, right now everyone gets along, but in a few years as they become preteens and teens, maybe not so much. So a clear understanding as to why they might want to move to a house that meets the needs of today's families. But it's a really cool house. And I can envision having a variety of programs. First and foremost, I think it can be a location for one of our summer camps. Talking with our ESC and summer camps team, they definitely see the potential for that, at least around 60 kids here as it's currently configured. We'll have to if the park board is amenable and we're able to secure the property, we'll do more due diligence on it. But there definitely is potential with summer camps. And why that's important to me is if we are able to put summer camps there, summer camps are a big revenue driver for the park system, which then provides the means to help cover the operating expenses for it, minimizing the amount of tax dollars we need for paying the utility bills and what have you. So that's something that is intriguing to us. There are other program potentials, and again, we would vet this out as we do our due diligence with the property, but we could do a variety of just a laundry list of some of the ones. Talking with staff, we could do some agritourism type things. Potentially, there might be space for a community garden outside it because it's an old farmhouse. There's a silo actually in River Heritage Park, which used to be next to a barn, which was a barn for this house. So again, we can sort of lean in on that agricultural history. Certainly, it can be a base for some of our nature programming. It could provide some. Especially some of the outbuildings or new buildings that we could potentially put there, storage for the amphitheater that we have out there that we haven't used because of, in the past, capacity issues, but we could enliven that, which is something that we heard from the public, more interest in programming on the east and west sides of town. Ghost haunts, art studio, just a variety of different programming options. Not saying any or all of those will be the right thing other than probably camps, but all potentials that we'll explore more. The the process that we have to do as a governmental entity is the park board has to pass a resolution of interest, which isn't a commitment to purchase the property. It's just saying, hey, we're interested in it. And that way it's recorded in a public meeting that a unit of government is wanting to purchase property. The next steps after that, and I've actually already initiated the process of securing appraisals, because we have to get at least two appraisals, and we can only pay the average of the two appraisals. So that defines the maximum cap that we can purchase for the property. And if those all seem to make sense, this resolution would allow me, working with the park board president, with legal counsel, also duly authorizing the assistant director and vice president in our respective absences to also participate in this endeavor, to begin putting together a purchase agreement and negotiating and taking all steps to actually purchase it. I don't typically identify in a public meeting exactly dollar amounts at this time, because I don't want to influence that. But based on the asking price, I think it's well within the financial means of the department, using impact fees and/or accumulated reserves from summer camps to be able to purchase this and do some upgrades to the property. If we do secure the property, I also would envision doing a little bit of study. I think there might be potential to increase programming opportunities to a couple of the outbuildings are kind of cool if it's a house, but not so much for public property. So taking some of the smaller barns or sheds are down and building a structure that maybe looks like a barn, maybe like the barn that was torn down at one point, that provides a bigger programming space that can be climate controlled, which allows us to probably double the amount of summer campers that we have there and gives more programming flexibility for the site. Again, we'd have to do more due diligence, but all those, I think, are within the grasp of the existing financial resources of the park board. So I highly recommend that the park board pass the resolution so we can continue these conversations.
Question?
Jim?
We would come back and have to vote again once we know the amount?
No.
So you're asking us to vote without knowing the amount?
Yeah, the resolution limits the purchase price to the average of the two appraisals.
It should be well under $1 million.
Well under $1 million. And what's your plan for it?
One, expanding the park, but two,
No, just this building.
the building, at least summer camps, potentially other recreation programming,
What kind of summer camp programs?
to be determined. I mean, we would likely move one of our existing summer camps, specialty camps, to this. Exactly which one, until we, dig into the building a little bit more. We haven't decided whether it's our camp that's focused on preteens or one that's focused on outdoor adventure. We haven't decided yet, but those are possibilities.
Well, I'm assuming it's been electrified.
Yes, the house has electric. We'll have to do an assessment as to the quality of the of everything, but it does have a boiler system that was newer, and it also has within the last 5 years a new air conditioning installed and new windows installed. So,
A family has.
yeah, the family's been actively living there, and the house. I mean, I didn't do a building inspection, as if you're buying a new house. That's part of the due diligence. But visual appearance, the family has been taking good care and has made upgrades to keep the house in good condition.
Square feet.
Don't know off the top of my head. I would guess probably over the two floors, around 1,100 square feet.
That's all.
Yeah, it's not a huge house, maybe 1,200. Actually, it's probably bigger than that. It's likely under 2,000 square feet.
Okay. And the roof's in good condition.
I didn't get on it, but I didn't see any visible signs of leaks.
Thanks.
This is the only action we will take on this property.
That's correct. That's our standard protocol.
I'm not totally comfortable with that.
2,500 square feet is what it is. This is what we did for Bear Creek Park, which was 27 acres and multi-million dollars.
Yeah, I knew that.
So I think, Mark has a couple questions. Mark?
This might even answer Jim's question to a certain extent. We looked at this property many years ago. And Michael, you've made it further than I made it with the park board at the time because we didn't ever get to a potential resolution. The importance of this property is that it anchors River Heritage Park. There's a second property very near there that we also urged the park board to purchase, to allow us to purchase years ago, which didn't go through either. Both those properties still need to be acquired in order to finish out that park as it was envisioned originally. So I think it's very important, and I congratulate you and especially Jess for being the owner of the house, which means that we have somebody to work with, which is much better than we had the last time. What has changed is that we have ESE programs and camp programs that we didn't have before. So to me, this is just virtually a no-brainer that it's something that we should be seriously looking at for the good of the community, to save the property and ensure that it continues and to be able to use that property to expand into other programming. And I believe, and I can't remember, Michael, and you might remind me, the original property that was along River Road by the park, is that still something that we have control of, or was that used by the water company?
Used by the water company.
So it's no longer active for us, for our use?
No.
Where we used to park the cars
Oh,
for
that's still
overflow?
available to us. Yeah,
Okay.
that's ours.
Because that would lend itself very nicely for community gardens or other type of activities. The original problem we had was the park board, prior to my coming on as director, had planted that entire field with prairie. And the prairie grew very well there, and to an extent, you couldn't see what was happening in the park, and we had issues in the park, which we in turn had to cut the prairie down at the urging of the police department and the neighbors. So to be able to activate that property once again and use it for something that would be beneficial to the community, I think would lend itself very well with this property as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that has been kind of a stumbling block as far as one, for a while it was the water company because they were thinking of expanding onto that open field that you were referencing. But two is the proximity to the house was something that we've always tried to be cognizant of, not doing something too close to the house that might be disruptive to residents. So if we own it, it certainly knocks out any of those concerns. I also neglected to mention that I did, one, of course, I consulted with President Judy Hagan before putting this on the agenda, but I've also consulted with Township Trustee Paul Hensel, Mayor Finkham, and Council President Adam Austin, just so that they're aware and all were enthusiastic about the idea.
Excellent.
Thanks. Anyone down here have a question? Katie?
What does the process of due diligence look like beyond an inspection?
We'll have a survey of the property, environmental assessment, and of course, title. Those three things are most important to protect the board and the property for the future.
Thank you. Michael, I do have one question that hasn't been asked yet. This being a 200-year-old house, how do you envision bringing it to be ADA compliant for our summer camps?
So a couple things. On the main, the upper level will not be able to be ADA compliant, so we'll have to factor that into any programming
Yep.
that we do. It's going to have new restrooms. So in the back portion of the building, where is kind of the mechanical area, I envision we're going to have to probably blow that area up. It's not something that's visible from the road. It's not part of the original structure. That's where we can put restrooms that would be fully accessible that we'd need to do. The restrooms I would envision doubling as our storm shelter, like they are in some of our other facilities. And appropriate break rooms, storage rooms, those type of things. So I envision that. I mean, we're not going to be able to just take the house and boom, we're immediately into it. There are going to have to be some upgrades that are made to it for public purposes, but that's certainly part of my thinking behind that. Additionally, like I said, if we do ultimately build a auxiliary building, that would also be, a new building fully designed to comply with ADA. So Curtis reminded me of some of the assets that we have. So between 108, which I think was, 4.5? Okay, so the park impact fee has 4.5 million in it, which this is one of the authorized uses along the White River Corridor, and we have over $3 million in accumulated reserves in the ESC Summer Camp Fund, which is from the summer camps that was occurred. So we've got the dollars to do both the acquisition and upgrades.
There are a lot of historic preservation grants available as well, so I think that would be something that we would definitely be looking into if we did acquire this property.
Yeah, I had a conversation with the Carmel Historical Preservation Commission. They do grants up to $100,000. They couldn't guarantee
Yep.
dollars, but they said this is something that would certainly very much be enticing to them.
Can I add one thing,
Brian?
Jen, to
Yeah.
Katie's question? I think I've been involved in almost all of the property transactions you've had over the last 15 or 20 years. I left one thing out. I can't recall one where we kept a building for habitation. We were either knocking them down or not using them, so we'll probably recommend a building inspection here too, just so you know what the mechanical's like and roof and these kind of things to be sure you don't have something, really an issue. And Mr. Garrettson, the resolution provides that the president has to approve, Michael has to agree, and I have to agree to the terms as well. And if there was something amiss, people would be coming back here and saying, okay, what do you want to do? Like there's some bad inspection or something like that.
I did have a question. You're talking about it, new restrooms, you may need new windows, stuff like that. Are you going to try to historically restore things, or are you going with modern?
The intent, because it is a historical structure, it is not on the National Register of Historic Places. So, and the windows that are in it are new windows. They've been installed within the last several years. They are not of historical, they didn't restore them to look, exactly like the original ones, but they look similar to what you would find for the period house. I think our goal would be to the greatest degree possible for a public building to maintain historical significance for it. Are we wanting it to be a museum and restoring it to how it was when it was first constructed? We're not going to go to that significance, but we want it to look like an old house. We want it to be respectful of the history of it. So we're going to lean strongly in on the historical significance, but there will be some modern components put in a way that doesn't detract from the historical. I'd hate to put like something facing River Road that looks new. It's all got to be behind the house so that when you're driving up to it, it looks substantially similar to what it did in the history.
Is this clapboard or brick?
Brick.
It's brick. There's clapboard too.
There, the structure on the side has some clapboard, but the main structure is bricks.
These windows on the front, are they wood?
The photo that's provided is a historical photo, so the current ones are aluminum clad windows.
Or what?
Aluminum clad.
Would you replace those?
They're new enough that I would not.
I'm just enough of a historian to make my living that way that I'd be more inclined to like it if it were preserved.
Mark?
Question, Curtis, did you ever fly your drone up into the silo and down to see what's in there? Is the old wood from the barn really still in the silo, and could we use that wood?
I don't have the credentials to fly in that park because of the airspace. It's an approach into the Fishers Airport. So I did have Mr. Ryan over there fly his drone over the silo, and I don't believe there's anything in the silo that I'm
So
aware of.
somebody took the wood we had.
That's my right, yes.
Yeah. Now, the good thing is, there's a whole bunch of other there's one other barn and a couple other structures that have older wood, and I would envision repurposing that for that new barn event space that I'm envisioning. So I think there's an opportunity to celebrate the past with some of those things.
Excellent.
I think if we don't have any other questions, I'll take a motion. Oh,
I know we talked about ESE camps. Do we have a needs-based assessment, like in terms of area and what the projected need to have it set up there?
Specifically for this site, not.
Location, yeah.
Yeah, for this one, no. What we do know is for our summer camps, our biggest challenge is having enough space to provide camps. During the school year, it's always a challenge in finding enough counselors to be able to serve all the people that want to participate in the after-school program. But when you turn over during the summer months, because of the kids that are home from college and not having, for the high school kids, all the obligations, we never have problems from a staffing standpoint. Knock on wood, I don't want to jinx us here. But our biggest challenge is we don't have enough spaces within the community to be able to serve camps. And on top of that, one of the challenges that we have is some of the camps are in the Monon Community Center that are in spaces that are typically used for group fitness programs. And then when we have the camps there, it displaces a number of our fitness programs. So we need to free up space within the community center so that typical community center programs can happen while we also find space for the summer camps. So one of the things that the master plan for Bear Creek Park envisions is a new facility out there to also expand our opportunities to grow the camp program. But right now, I don't think we could ever create enough building space to meet. And certainly not within our
Personal
budget.
experience, yes, it's very hard to get into camps.
Yeah.
any other questions? Okay, Mark?
I move to adopt Resolution G-2025-003 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of Mark's motion and John's second, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Abstain or opposed? Okay.
This has 3.22 acres.
That is correct.
Sorry, this is passed. Consideration for professional services agreement with the Smith Group. Michael?
So this last new action item is to enter into an agreement with Smith Group for Phase 1 design development of Bear Creek Park. Sort of my overview with the forward focus. Obviously, one of our big goals is to expand park and recreation opportunities on the west side. And thanks to $8 million committed from the City Council with their recent large bond package, we have enough money to begin development of Phase 1. So what we are proposing, Smith Group was originally selected for developing the master plan for Bear Creek through a competitive request for proposals. We asked a number of highly qualified designers to submit their process and ideas for how to develop the master plan. And then through a review process, we selected Smith Group. And Smith Group has a long history with the park system, and we didn't select them because of the history, although that certainly contributed to the confidence that we have in them. They were the lead design for Central Park and for the redesign of West Park. Again, we know their work, but they brought a very creative, imaginative design process that included outreach to kids so that we understand what they want, and a very robust public input process. And it has been our historical practice within the park board and park system to, once we identify a well-qualified design team to do the master plan, to continue with that team as we go and roll into schematic design, which takes the master plan to a little bit more detail, and design development, which starts moving us to construction documents. So what we're requesting is the park board to approve us to be able to do both the schematics and the design development as the initial phase. With this, even though we have bond proceeds, we had also anticipated using park impact fees for this project, and have $1 million allocated for Bear Creek out of that. So we are proposing using the impact fees for covering this expense, and then we'll work closely with the city to take it from design development to construction. But the first step is to get it so that we know exactly what we can build with the $8 million. And this gets it here with the team that we're very comfortable with. With that, I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
I move that the park board approve the professional services agreement with Smith Group for Bear Creek Park in the sum of $378,000, and authorize the director, CEO, or assistant director, COO, to execute the same. I also move that the park board delegate the director, CEO, and the assistant director, COO, the authority to determine whether it is in the best interest of the board and department to add or change an item or items in the contract with Smith Group, and to approve each amendment up to an amount not to exceed its purchasing authority, and in accordance with applicable Indiana law, with a report to the park board at a subsequent park board meeting.
Thanks, Jim and Lynn. Before we vote, yes, go ahead.
Michael, can you, so the 378, it says within the description, talks about $345,000 for design work and $33,000 for public engagement.
Yes.
Do you have any idea what the public engagement piece
Absolutely.
look like?
Absolutely. Excellent question. For this one, we are definitely wanting to go back to the kids as we develop some playgrounds. We are because in this first phase, what we anticipate including within the development is a playground. The master plan included a tower. So if you don't envision specifically what it looks like, but the concept of the fire tower, if you've been to Brown County State Park at the west entrance, the masonry one, something that gets you higher, that you get a nice vista over the park. So some type of feature, probably a modern spin of that within the park. Trails, maybe some ecological work with the creek. Certainly prairie restoration, parking, those types of things we envision having the resources to be able to do in phase one. What this would do is, one, would go back to both elementary and middle school students once we have some different option A, option B, to hone in on the type of play that we want. This park is surrounded by neighbors, so we want to make sure that we're talking to the neighbors and giving them updates because they were very actively involved in the master plan. And we want to keep that engagement. So, we're going to be building off it. There shouldn't be any surprises because it's all part of the master plan. But as you go from conceptual to more reality, bubble diagrams start looking like things. So we want to make sure that they see that and we're receiving their feedback on that. There'll be opportunities for the general public to also participate. But those are some of the minimum things. We also anticipate the master plan had a steering committee that involved a couple park board members and a couple elected officials. So we also envision creating another steering committee that helps guide staff and the design to make sure we're staying on the right course.
Great, thank you.
Brian, since Jim made the motion, do I need to wait?
No. Well, you may want to, so we could vote on it.
No, that's fine.
You don't have to.
Mark?
My memory, Michael, when we were working on Bear Creek, were that some of the neighbors had a concern when we talked about towers. And we had committed pretty much that a tower would not be intrusive and looking into the neighborhoods as much. It was going to be somehow protected by either trees or locations so as not to be that.
That
Intrusive.
remains my vision for that. The master plan identified sort of the northeast portion of the park, which is the furthest away from the neighbors. There's only the one house that the park kind of encompasses or encircles on the east side. But yeah, the idea is this isn't a means by which to look into the neighbors. It's something to have a vista of the park itself. When we were working with Smith Group as they were working on scoping this proposal for the board's consideration, they looked at, what do we envision as far as heights? And they showed staff different levels and what the sight lines could look like from outside the park as well as what the sight lines could look like from the tower. And, our focus, and which I think is true to what the master plan was, is keeping it at that lower level where maybe you see it from 146th Street or Shelburne, but you're definitely not skying over. You're not seeing, Salesforce Tower downtown. That's not the goal. The goal is to see the nature within the park.
Okay, thank you.
That's not what I wanted. I thought let's go high. I told them let's go like 800 feet, Mark, but they won't listen to me.
I can imagine that.
You can climb the water tower in Westfield and see higher if you want.
You can take the vote and record Jim's vote when he returns also.
Okay. So all those in favor of Jim's motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Then we'll ask for Jim's vote when he comes back. Old business, White River Greenway North Extension, Michael?
Thank you. On this particular item, we are requesting approval of a second amendment to the Phase 2 agreement with SJCA, which is the design team for the White River Greenway North Extension. With this particular project, obviously, we've had to work very closely with Conner Prairie, which owns much of the property that the greenway is being extended onto. They've granted us an easement, but we're also working around some of their development plans. And as we've continued to be working closely with their team, some adjustments needed to be made in the central transition zone, and to make sure everything works together. Additionally, because there are some, we know the Delaware tribe had settlements in this particular area. Of course, we had to do a Phase 1 and Phase 2 archaeological study. And as part of our agreement with the state, there was some additional work that we committed to doing to inspect as work was being done, which prevented us from having to do an even more extensive Phase 2. So the 28,000 proposed Second Amendment covers some of the additional redesign work to make sure that we are coordinated and working, we fit in with what Conner Prairie is developing or proposing to develop. And we also did the archaeological work necessary to make this, to prevent this from being even a higher fee. So this was reviewed by Dave Ford, who effectively serves as our owner's representative for the project, with a favorable recommendation to approve these services. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions the board may have.
Are there any questions? Okay. I'll accept a motion.
I move the Park Board approve the Second Amendment to the Phase 2 agreement with SJCA for the White River Greenway North extension as presented. I further move to authorize the Director of Parks and Recreation to execute the amendment as prepared by the board's legal counsel.
Second.
Thank you, Mark and Jim. All those in favor of Mark's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then Jim,
Yes.
we voted on the consideration of professional services agreement with the Smith Group for Bear Creek.
Yes.
We would like to record your vote.
Yes.
It was a yes.
Sorry. So that also vote carries with everyone. Okay, so that brings us now concluding old business, and we are to the attorney's report. Brian?
Thank you very much, Jen, and welcome to the new board members. You'll see either myself or an associate, Zach Nicely, here at the meetings, and we work with your staff and officers throughout the month to keep things on the right foot on the legal end. So this past month, a few things accomplished. We recorded the ownership now of Central Park with the Park Board, so that's been only 20 years in the works. So that is all taken care of, and recorded documents. We'll put together a transcript, actually, for the future as well, so staff has that at their fingertips. We also finalized, recorded with the State Board of Accounts and circulated the Third Amendment to the interlocal agreement under which the board operates, giving you 2 years to figure out what financial mechanisms we're going to use for the future. And just for the new board members, many park capital projects throughout the park system have been funded by the local income tax that was generated by the bond issued by the township in 2004 back when LIT was determined, distribution by your amount of debt, which changed about 9 years ago. They had a very substantial circulation of local income tax that was used exclusively for park projects. That's what Michael was referring to earlier about we're not going to be buying those assets anymore. The township isn't. So that's why they're giving them all to you and documenting that. So that's recorded and done. We're working with your staff on several real estate possible opportunities in the future. So we're coordinating appraisals, that kind of thing, to be brought to the board in the future for similar interests resolutions if they work out that way. So happy to answer any questions. And we field grounders and catch a couple of pop flies from the team every once in a while. So those are the big ones, though.
Well, we appreciate your work as always.
Thanks. Enjoy working with y'all.
Any questions? No? Okay. And director's report?
A couple items just to keep the park board appraised of. First, as reported at, I believe, last month's meeting, working closely with the city of Carmel to do an assessment of Brookshire Golf Course and preparing a business plan for the golf course. Since the city assumed ownership of Brookshire, there's never been a business plan. Mayor Finkham, first when she was on city council and now she's become mayor, has always been interested to see if maybe it might make more sense for the golf course to be integrated within the park system as opposed to a standalone city department. So the business plan is really an effort to understand how Brookshire best fits in with the city, what financial potential it has. It does not appear to be achieving cost recovery, although it's high cost recovery based on the numbers that I've seen so far. But having an outside consultant come in and really do what any good business operation would do is what's the strengths, what's the weaknesses, how can the city make that a more effective operation if appropriate, and also as part and parcel with that, assessing does it make sense to integrate that within the park system. So no commitments have been made, but I did agree to help participate and lead that process because we have done business plans for both the Monon Community Center on several occasions as well as for extended school enrichment. So it's something that we're leading. The city will be paying for the study, not us. So more to learn from that. We are using the city's process for securing or trying to identify a consultant as opposed to how the park system typically does services. Usually, we will identify highly qualified vendors if we don't have some that we already work with, obtain proposals, and if necessary, bring them to the park board depending on the dollar amount. The city's using OpenGov, which appears to be a great system for maybe bidding or products that you give quotes or a fixed price for a fixed thing. You can probably assess my assessment as it pertains to services. So we'll see how that works out. And we would probably have someone under contract already to be able to do that assessment. But anyway, more to go. And Mr. Gertz, I know you had a question.
We're not talking about buying the golf course, are we?
No. Actually, I was in a department head meeting with other city departments. Redevelopment Director Henry Mostetsky reminded everyone that the golf course is owned by the CRC, and I told Henry specifically we're not buying it. So I think we're clearly on record that we're not buying it. So I felt I could say that safely on behalf of the park board. So.
Good.
Other things that we're working with, also kind of related to the city, I was involved in several meetings with regard to the Central Core Greenways. So part of the $110 million lease rental bond, in addition to Bear Creek Park benefiting the park system, is the creation of two new greenways within the Central Core, an east-west one that will go from the Monon to Old Meridian Street near Grand Boulevard, so near a little bit south of Carmel Middle School. So we are doing scoping with some service providers to put together preliminary plans so that we can then work with the properties that we would have to acquire or obtain easements on to be able to know exactly what we need. And also a north-south trail that connects from this new east-west trail north to Main Street, just east of Old Meridian. So starting the process for both of those. I'll have illustrations to show those at a later one, but the first step is working with engineers. The city has requested a proposal from Y to be involved in landscape and some of the scoping for that. So we've got a vendor that we're very comfortable working with, helping us with this. City's sort of taking the lead on the contracting, but Parks will be heavily involved in the design and looks of the greenway. So it's starting out to be a very good collaborative partnership between engineering and Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation.
Separate subject, I read in the paper that the mayor wants the parks to take over a swimming pool on Smoky Row.
That's part of the bond included funding for a roundabout.
A bond. For what?
The bond, the $110 million bond included funding for the city to develop a roundabout at Ironwood Drive and Smoky Row,
Right,
which is where there's an existing pool. The Smoky Row Swim Club, I think is the name of it. I'm on record of saying, under no circumstances is Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation interested in being in the pool business. The bond didn't include money for that to be a pool. It did provide funding for like a small park there. So that's what we've, presuming that the roundabout goes in and there's enough ground left over for a small park, we'll work with the city on designing that park. But as far as a pool operation, that's just that's not viable. So something that, again, I felt very confident based on one, the master plan, but two, the cost ramifications of a pool like that. It's just not feasible for us to be able to operate an operation like that and make money.
So take them out, put in dirt?
Exactly. The building, honestly, all the parking and maybe a corner of the building would be needed for the roundabout regardless. So, I mean, the pool's been closed for several years now. I don't think it's a viable operation as a private pool, and it's certainly not a viable operation as a
I
public
thought
pool.
we were getting away from these small parcels.
This is one that's a priority of the city council.
Okay.
One last item, thinking a couple months in the future, our April Park Board meeting would be on April 8th, which also coincides with spring break for Carmel Clay schools. So I know Reedy, when she came on board, was upfront saying, I already have a vacation plans, which obviously makes sense. Knowing that others may also have vacation plans there, I wanted to see if we have any potential of not achieving quorum, and if so, we would need to look at some alternative dates. So you don't have to tell me right now, but I'll send out an email just to make sure that we have a quorum, and if not, we'll send out subsequent to identify maybe some alternative dates.
Michael, are you thinking that if you don't have a quorum, you move it earlier or later?
The meeting would be the 8th, so I'm not sure we can really. Yeah, so it probably would be the third week.
Okay.
Would you be able to send, what is that thing? Survey Monkey or whatever that had,
Yeah,
that said,
we'll send a poll to
that
find
said,
out.
hey, can you come the 8th or the 15th?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm sorry, Michael, was that your last
Yes.
item? Perfect. And then for information items, I may need a little help with this. I know that Jonathan, who is out sick, is our
Plan commission.
Plan Commission appointee. So we don't have an update there. And then John, you're our school board representative. Generally speaking, the school board representative gives an update from things that have happened on the school board. You may not be prepared to do that tonight. That is okay. Michael, do you want, other than like what's going on at the school board, important topics, you're our voice from the school board. So if you have something to share, you may. If not, the next meeting is fine.
I don't want to just ramble on just for the sake of talking. I will tell you, we had a great meeting last night. So once a month, we have workshop meetings. So last night was all about the science of reading, which was fascinating. And it really was a great reminder of the work that the school board really needs to be focused on, which is helping to educate our children. So we had some third graders from Cherry Tree, and their teacher lead us through an activity. We had to read a book. The school board had a homework assignment, and we had to read a book and participate in learning with them, and it was awesome. So I will make sure I'm bringing reports on a more regular basis, but we're grateful for the partnership with the Parks Department for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. We look forward to that. Michael, anything else?
Typically, we'll have Eric also give an update for the Climate Action Committee.
Yeah. So Climate Action Advisory Committee, we met last month, but nothing of substance to report to the board. So on that one, I will for Park Foundation though, if you don't mind. They did provide us with $25,000 in funding this last month. So that'll show up on next month's contribution list. But wanted to say thank you to them as well. They did finalize that action last month, and that was a matching fund for a grant that we received for the DNR for invasive species project that we have going on. So, anything else from Foundation?
I think that's, Mark, unless you have, Mark or Katie, unless you have any.
No, there's nothing to report from the last meeting I attended.
Thank you for those updates. Invasive species, we're going to bring in a lot of money for those because they just keep coming. Can't ever get rid of them. Okay, so then our next spot is Park Board comments and or discussion. So this is for new members. If you want to say anything, mention anything that doesn't fit anywhere else in our agenda, you're welcome to do so. Anyone? No? So I know I'm going to say something, of course. John, if you have a minute, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself since we'll use that?
Sure. So obviously just elected to the school board. I lived in Carmel. My family and I have lived in Carmel for about 12 years. We are frequenters of Carmel Parks, frequent the Monon Community Center. I was there very early this morning. What else can I tell you? Professionally, I work in youth center nonprofits. I've spent my career in that space. I specifically work in the education space also. My wife's a licensed clinical social worker. Our son's a sophomore at Carmel High School. And yeah, it's a great place to raise a family. That's why we chose Carmel, despite my wife growing up south of 96th Street. When we moved back here, when our son was young, we chose Carmel on purpose for the schools and the community. So excited to be part of the Parks Board through my service school board.
Well, fantastic. Well, glad to have you. And then Reedy?
So I moved to Carmel 3 years ago. We used to live in downtown Indy, actually. Hated the schools, and so kind of moved to Carmel for the schools, and I've loved it so far. We have two kids, 9 and 6. Oh, she's 7 actually this week. First grader and fourth grader at Collegewood. Love, love, love Collegewood. I have been a previous ESE representative, and that's how I kind of started getting involved. Very active at our PTO. That's what I do in my side hustle. My main job, daytime and nighttime and weekends, is I'm a neonatologist with Riley. I trained here. The initial plan was to move as soon as we finished training, but loved it in Indiana, and I'm here for now the past 12 years.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. And then, Katie, did you get a chance to say anything about yourself last month? I'm sorry, it's been too long.
No, it's okay. I mean, Matt spoke.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm Katie Mueller for the new members. I just joined last month. That was my first meeting. Born and raised in Carmel. I left for a while to go work for Target up in Minnesota after college, but came back about 10 years ago. My husband and I moved to Carmel about 5 years ago. We were in the Broad Ripple area. He's an anesthesiologist at IU, so we have some medical connections. I have 2 boys, 4 and 6, that go to Mohawk Trails.
Well, fantastic. We welcome everyone new to the Park Board. It's really nice to have new people come on. And so then, anyone else have any comments or anything? Okay, so with that, like always, I'll just take a motion to adjourn. Anyone to make a motion? Moved. A second? Second. Perfect. So we'll end tonight's meeting at 7:30. Thank you.